calculator view controller.zib. I have the name of the file in the lower left corner right there. You can also see it in the main window of Interface Builder, which is that small window at the bottom. So I told you that the view is like the minions of the controller. That's why we put all the views, including the buttons and subviews, into a file that has the name of our controller.zib. Sometimes that confuses people a little bit, but that's why we do that, because these things are the minions. They essentially are being driven by calculator view controller, which is our controller. One other thing to note is this little icon that says Files Owner. Very important to understand what that is. Since this is calculator view controller's minions, the files owner for this file, this in Interface Builder, is our controller. So anytime we want to wire something up to our controller in either direction, that's the icon we're going to use. Okay, sometimes people get a little bit confused. Where is my controller? I don't see it. It's the files owner in this file. All right. Now, let me talk briefly about these 4 windows here that appear in Interface Builder. These are the only 4 windows really you're going to see. The one in the left there, Library, that's a big list of all the objects in the UI kit and some other kits that you can drag out to build your user interface with. So you can see right there we've got label and round rect button and a text field. We have a switch, a slider. These are all things we can just pick up with the mouse and drag them out into our view, our controller's view, to build whatever our user interface is, and we'll be doing that today. On the right, that window is called the inspector, and that, if you select any object in Interface Builder, it's just an inspector that lets you set all kinds of attributes of it. The contents of it change as you select different things. Obviously, the contents are different if it's a button selected versus a UI label or something else. And then the window on the bottom, that's the main window. That has a graphical representation of kind of top-level views, but also objects that don't have a visual representation, like your controller, Files Owner, right? They need an icon so you can drag lines between them. That's where they live. You can view it in different ways. This one right here is in a big icon mode, but you can list it in kind of a list mode, and then there's like a browser type mode, like the Finder in the Mac, to find your objects. And when you have a big user interface that has a lot of stuff in there, it can be sometimes convenient to go find things in there versus trying to click around in them. Up in the middle window, top middle, and the top middle is our view. So we directly manipulate our view. You notice that view is the kind of the aspect ratio of an iPhone. If we were doing an iPad app, it would have, we'd have a window that would be more iPad sized and ratioed. And so we literally just directly manipulate stuff into our UI, and I'm going to show you that in Interface Builder. So here's the connections we're going to make. First, we're going to drag from one of the digit buttons down to Files Owner, and this little black window is going to come up, and it's going to show all of the methods that we can send that make sense from a button to this Files Owner. And we're just going to pick digit pressed, in this case, and it'll make that connection. Okay, we're going to do the exact same thing with the operation buttons. Okay, that little black window is going to come up. I'm going to pick operation pressed, and that's going to wire it up. Now, I'm not going to have to do this for every single button, because I'm just going to do it for my first digit button, and then I'm going to copy and paste it. Because copying and pasting in iOS Interface Builder keeps the connections, so it copies the connection as well. So any digit button that I've wired up and copy and paste, the new button will also be wired up to send that same message. And you might ask, how am I going to know whether I'm clicking on a 7 button or a 5 button? Well, remember that the message has an argument, :UI button sender. So we'll know which button sent us, and we're going to write a little code to ask the sender, what is it that, what button are you? And then we'll be able to do our digit or operation from there. And then we also have one more dragging to do, which is we're going to drag from the Files Owner up to the display. And notice the direction you drag matters, because here we're dragging from our controller to our view because we're making an outlet, but the same kind of little black window will come up. This one has different choices in it, display and view, because we're making an outlet. It doesn't make sense to we're not doing target action here, we're doing outlets. And so we'll pick display. We'll talk about what that other one, view, is. We inherit that from UI view controller. We'll talk about that later in the quarter. Okay, so that's it. That's basically what we're going to do. So, a demo is worth 1,000 slides, really, is what I should say. And so we're just going to sit down and we'll do this thing. See how we're doing on time. Plenty of time. All right, so we start with Xcode. Now, I should say, let me show you where Xcode's going to land. When you install the SDK in Xcode, it's going to install this directory at your top level called Developer. All right? And if you look inside a Developer, there's going to be an Applications, and here's where Xcode and Interface Builder live. I kind of recommend that you create a Developer directory in your home directory as well and keep all your projects in there. Okay? It's just kind of a nice consistency of naming. So you're just going to double-click on Xcode right here, and you're going to get this splash screen. Now, this splash screen on the right has all the recent projects that you've been working on. Okay, we don't have any because this is our first project, but you can one-click there and you're right into your project. Very convenient. But then on the left, there's these three buttons right here, a little bit of help, how to get to developer.apple.com, basically the Dev Center there, and also creating a new project. That's what we want to do today. I'm just going to click Create a New Project. Now, when we create a project, Xcode essentially knows how to give you a template for a lot of different kinds of projects. In fact, if you had, for here, we could create a Mac OS X project, actually, a Cocoa application, which is for the Mac, not for iPhone. And then, you know, command line tools, things like that. You can even create frameworks, libraries, even Cocoa Touch libraries. If you're building, you know, a suite of applications, you want to have a shared library, you can do that. But what we're mostly interested in is this section, iOS application. Okay, these are templates for building iOS applications. And you can see there's some here, like building an OpenGL ES application. That'd be a 3D graphics application, split view-based application for iPads. There's really two that we're interested in, which is these two. Okay, window-based application is the most raw application. It doesn't have any MVC in there for you yet. You're going to build all that yourself in code. It's the most minimal application. We will actually be using this for our second series of homework because we're going to be building a pretty complicated MVC picture, and so we're going to want to control that ourselves. But the one we're going to choose today, and the one you choose for a simple app, it's called View-Based Application. I wish it were called something like Simple MVC because that's really what it is. View-based application template is going to create a project that has a controller and a view, and you'll have to put your own model in there. So it's basically a single tree controller view model to start with. Now, you can always add more controllers and views. You will. But this is a nice, simple way to start. So let's choose that. It's asking for the name of it. By default, it's putting it in my developer directory, which is good. I'm going to call it Calculator. I strongly recommend you call it Calculator because if you're following along with the walkthrough that I'm giving you, everything is calculator this, calculator that. You'll be confused if you call this something else. Also, I recommend a capital C. And the reason for that is that it's kind of a naming convention that is universally used in iOS application is that classes start with a capital letter. Okay? And it's going to use the name of your project to build you a view controller template. Okay, I told you this was a template, Xcode, building you a little template for an app. It's going to create Calculator View Controller for you. So if you call this foo, it's going to create foo View Controller. So you want to use Calculator capital C here. So that's what I'm going to do. So now it's built this template and showing us now the main window of Xcode. You're going to be in this window a lot. This is where pretty much everything happens. Building, editing, debugging, the whole thing happens here. So let's take a little tour of this. I'm going to try and deal with the size of the windows to let you see as much as possible here. This area up here in the upper left, very important. This is where all your files are kept. And these little folders can be opened. So I'm going to open a few of them here. And you can see then all the files that are in your project. Now, some of them are like frameworks down here, like this project is going to use the UIKit framework, Foundation framework, and Core Graphics framework, which is for drawing, 2D drawing. And then there's other sources right here, like my main. This is basically a Unix executable at its heart, and so it has to have a main. The main is pretty simple. It basically calls a couple of objects to get itself started. Then here, calculator view controller.zib, that's our view. That's that little bag, that thing we showed you in Interface Builder. That's kind of our collection of view. It's empty right now. We're going to have to put some stuff into that. And then it created two classes for us right here. Calculator view controller.h and .m and calculator app delegate.h and .m. Now, calculator app delegate is a special kind of delegate. Remember I told you delegates are those things like will, did, should, kind of delegation things going on. And that's what calculator app delegate is. But instead of being a delegate from a view to its controller, it's a delegate from the application object. So it lets you kind of control the operation of your application. So this one that it creates is kind of a stub, but it's got a lot of dids and wills in there, and we'll be looking at that a lot this quarter because there's a lot of stuff that you can control about how your application runs via your app delegate. But today, we're mostly interested in our view, which is this guy, and our controller, which is this guy. Okay? Now, what about our model? We need our model. And of course, it can't really create that in the template because it has no idea what the model might be. So we're going to create that by going here to File, New, create a new file. And again, you can create different kinds of files. You can create a new UI view controller subclass or a protocol, an Objective-C protocol if you wanted to. We're going to create an Objective-C class, and it's going to be a subclass of NSObject. You can see right here. Click Next. Now it wants to know the name. We're going to call it Calculator Brain. I apologize for my mistyping. This keyboard is not my usual keyboard. So there's Calculator Brain. So now we have our Calculator Brain. Notice it kind of put our Calculator Brain in between our two things here. We can just pick these up and drag these around. Okay, you can even drag them between different little folders if you want to arrange them. But here's our Calculator Brain. Now, there's no implementation of the Calculator Brain or anything like that, but at least there's a stub there for it. So we're going to put aside implementing our Calculator Brain, and actually we're going to do our header, our public API, of our Calculator View Controller. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. You can see it brings up our View Controller. I'm going to make some more space for it right here. And it's already put our superclass and an import for that, so that's convenient for us. So let's just add our outlets and actions, our connections from our controller to our model and view, and then also the actions that are going to be sent from our view. So let's start with the connection from our controller to our view. So it's an IB outlet. Remember I told you we're going to put this kind of magic word in there, and it's a UI label called display. That's going to be wired up to be our display in our calculator. Then we also, though, need another outlet to our model. So that's Calculator Brain. I'm going to call it Brain. That's what I'm going to call my instance variable. Now I need to import my Calculator Brain header file here because I can't reference classes that I don't have a header file for. Notice that it's kind of escape completing as I type. Xcode is really nice about this. You start to type something, it's going to start escape completing it, and you can just use tab to tab over. Especially if you have a long method with a lot of things, it just jumps you to each variable. Very, very nice. Makes it really easy to type very quickly, and also not make mistakes. So that's my instance variables. That's the only instance variables I have for now. So now let's put those IB actions in. So I have an IB action digit pressed, which is going to have a UI button sender as its argument. And I have an IB action operation pressed, which has a UI button also, sender. So this argument to our IB action that's sent is the object that's sending us the message, which is really convenient. We really need that in this implementation. Actually, I could build and run my application right now. I could have built and run it before, but let's go ahead and build and run it. Now, I don't have a device connected, so what's going to happen when I build and run is it's going to run a simulator. All right, and you can see here's our little iPhone simulator. It's simulating the running of an iPhone. There's also an iPad simulator as well. And you can see that our application runs. It's great. Has no user interface. It doesn't do anything. I can't touch on it. You obviously touch by using your mouse in the simulator. The simulator